Welcome into OutKick the show. I am your fearless leader, Clay Travis. I hope all of you are having fantastic Wednesdays wherever you may be across the country or around the world. I am here with all of you, and we are continuing to roll through all of the stories that matter the most in the world. College football, Major League Baseball is underway right now, the playoffs, and the NFL. All that and more. But we begin with what I think is probably the greatest lie that has been told out there in general. It is that there's actually a huge market for woke nonsense. I'm here to tell you it's not true. I staked my entire career on normal people don't buy any of this BS. And it's paid off well for me. It's paid off well for OutKick, and I think it's going to continue to pay off well for me for the rest of my life. But I saw this story, and I thought it was important to talk about more than it actually has been talked about in terms of the results. So this is, you guys know, I am a print media guy. This is actually pretty funny. I am the only guy that carries newspapers on basically airplanes now. And I will go on with like 6, 8, 10 different newspapers all stacked up. I have a huge pile of them, and I just sit in the corner and I just go through the newspapers like crazy. So if you ever see me on a Southwest Airlines flight, there is a very high probability that you will see me with a huge pile of newspapers. And the reason why I like to read print newspapers is because sometimes I read articles that I otherwise would not see that get in front of me and actually make me think about a story different. Because algorithms are very good at giving you what they know you already like. But most growth, most challenges to your thought, most strengthening of your arguments or your perspectives comes from reading things that you might not otherwise get exposed to. And so this is one reason why I think what actually matters truly in any company is diversity of thought, not cosmetic diversity. Because if you have diversity of thought, you can sit around, you can argue, and you can debate what the best issue is or what the best solution is, and you can work through what the result should be in a positive way. And I'll give you an example from my own life. In fact, she would say this. I've been married for 21 years. 21 years. Full generation. And early in our marriage, I would ask my wife's advice on something, or I would share a question that I had, and then sometimes I would do the opposite of what she suggested. And over time, she got mad about that, as wives tend to do. And finally, she was just like, why are you asking my opinion if you're going to ultimately not take my advice? And it was a good point, and something I hadn't communicated that well. I try to get opinions from as many smart people whose opinion I trust to make sure that I'm not missing something. Is there an angle here that I'm just not seeing? Is there a result that I just don't work through? All day long in my head is just a constant circuitry of ideas and arguments that I'm trying to work through. Sometimes people come up with arguments that I hadn't thought of before. I say, well, I got to really think about that. Other times they don't, but they're smart, and I want to make sure that I'm not missing something. And I think much of American corporate structure is often filled with people who are afraid to say what they actually think, and so companies end up suffering. And people just don't make rational, logical decisions. And sometimes when you do, it isn't even that crazy of a decision, but the results can be super positive, which brings me to this story. It's in today's Wall Street Journal. The headline is, American Eagle gained customers after Sydney Sweeney ads. And there's a couple of data points in here, which should be talked about massively, given how much we discussed this story when it blew up as a cultural issue. Instead, I haven't seen it talked about very much. But I wanted to follow along here. According to American Eagle, whose stock, by the way, has nearly doubled since this advertising campaign began, American Eagle helped to bring in nearly 1 million new customers between July and September. And they say the Sweeney cinched waist denim jacket sold out in a day, and the Sydney jean, an ultra-wide leg with a butterfly on the back pocket, sold out in a week. The market has a different imperative than much of the way media talks to the market. 1 million new customers just by putting a hot girl in denim, a jacket, and jeans. They sold out almost immediately. On top of that, you remember when ABC News tried to say this has eugenics principles in it? I think it was in ABC News. One of the stupid morning shows. Might have been CBS. Might have been NBC. They all kind of say the same thing. But they had an expert, and she said this because Sydney Sweeney has great genes, Jeans, also was an overlap, Genes, as in she has good genes, genetics. They said, oh, this is Nazism. This is eugenics. Well, it turns out that the CEO of American Eagle is actually a guy named Jay Schottenstein, billionaire CEO of American Eagle. He said in his first interview, we stand behind what we did. And they say Schottenstein personally approved the ads before they began airing on July 23rd. And this guy, Schottenstein, is actually an Orthodox Jew. And I'm reading from the Wall Street Journal, says he was perplexed at the criticism the campaign smacked of eugenics, the Nazi embrace theory. He said his mother-in-law grew up in Nazi Germany and watched as the synagogue across the street from her home was burned to the ground. I'm very conscious of that term, Schottenstein said. He said that if he and his team had felt the campaign would be offensive in that way, quote, we never would have done it. So an Orthodox Jew personally approves a campaign that inures to the immense benefit of American Eagle and adds 1 million new customers. They can't keep the product in stock. And yet everybody out there in social media on the left was saying, this is unacceptable. It's going to destroy the brand. They are relying on people being cowards and backing down when they are challenged. And when you come through the cancellation fire, and I've been through a lot of the cancellation fires, something happens. People trust you more, and your audience continually expands. Whatever you think about me, every day, every week, every year, there's more people who listen or watch what I say than did the week before, the month before, the year before. That's been the case for my 20-plus year career. And that's even though lots of media organizations actually don't like me and have even banned me. In fact, in my interview with Paul Feinbaum, which I would encourage you guys to go watch on YouTube, but which has made news all over the place, Feinbaum says, yeah, Disney, ESPN, when I went to work at the SEC network, they told me you're no longer able to have Clay Travis on the air. I've told you this before. I don't know that an ESPN employee has told you this before, but watch that clip.
Going to ESPN cost us the best guest that we had.
Right.
Which is Clay Travis.
The people at ESPN don't always love me.
I've never admitted that, but you know, I think it would be disingenuous. For one time, I literally called you and said, by the way, I know you may think we don't like you. We can't have you on anymore.
Yeah. I was banned. I'm still banned at CNN. Maybe one day ESPN will decide they like me.
Okay, so there is Feinbaum confirming what I have told you guys before, which is Disney ABC banned me from being able to appear on ESPN, and I remain the only guy banned on both ESPN and also ESPN in the entire country. That I wear as a badge of honor. But it speaks to the fact that big media often is dismissive of people like me because they try to label me as controversial. And I was talking about this earlier on Clay and Buck. I don't think I'm remotely controversial. And I don't think there's anything wrong with controversy. But all I say is what huge majorities of Americans actually believe. And that is labeled controversial because they want to artificially circumscribe the marketplace of ideas and restrict people who disagree with them by labeling them, not by arguing against them, but by labeling them. And they are so profoundly dishonest on the left that I want to play this clip for you. MSNBC for years told their audience that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack, that the best version of Joe Biden was 81-year-old Joe Biden. Joe Scarborough even told his audience that this was the best version of Joe Biden that had ever existed, the one that was clearly cognitively impaired and physically in decline of a massive degree. Joe Scarborough said that's the best Joe Biden we've ever seen. They didn't cover. They even labeled as cheap fakes videos that suggested that Biden wasn't in command. They said it wasn't real that Biden was refusing to answer questions or hold press conferences, that he was the best version of himself that he'd ever been. This just aired on Monday. Rachel Maddow and Lawrence Tribe, I think is this guy's name. I'll be honest with you, I don't watch a lot of MSNBC. Guys, let me know who the other guy she's talking to is here in this clip so I can tell people who it is at the end of this clip. But they're now saying 79-year-old Trump needs to be taken off the stage and his family shouldn't let him be doing public events. This is what you would see if you were watching MSNBC. They never said this about Biden for 4 years, but now Trump, he's the one dealing with major cognitive issues. Watch.
Dramatic mental decline in Donald Trump. This is a sharp cliff that he's just fallen off within the last fortnight, especially over this particular weekend of social media posting. It has been a stunning weekend. It's something I was going to get into anyway in talking about how do you talk to a guy who just did this, and this is what he had done before Leader Jeffries walked into the room, before Leader Schumer walked into the room. Now we see what he's done after they left the room, and it's even worse. The question of how can you possibly negotiate with this man becomes all the more vivid.
And it's not just like transgressive or offensive or bad. It's also just weird. Yeah. It's really weird stuff. Like there's something weird going on up there.
Yeah, it's inexplicable, and it is absolutely worthy of a family intervention. There's no other family in America that would let a 79-year-old do things like this publicly. They would absolutely intervene. It would be the only thing every family member wanted to do. They would do it urgently. And this 79-year-old just continues to collapse publicly.
Yeah. I mean, literally the only good thing about him being president in these terms is that he can't drive, which is good. So they don't have to worry about taking the keys away. But other than that, you're onto it. Let me get out of your way, Lawrence.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you.
All right. I mean, that is how blatantly they will lie to all of you. MSNBC filled with liars. Not just MSNBC. Yesterday we played a clip for all of you of Don Lemon lecturing white men for being too violent. And I analyzed that, but after I shared the clip, I was thinking about it even more. And first of all, I don't think, as I said yesterday, that lecturing racial groups about anything, especially if you're outside the racial group, is in any way remotely beneficial. In other words, if you are a white man and Don Lemon says to you, white men let me talk to you. Why are you so violent? Don Lemon isn't actually trying to influence the culture in any kind of positive way, right? He's not actually trying to make things better. He's just trying to play identity politics. And as a gay black man, he is allowed to lecture white men because that's what he believes the rules of identity politics are. And whatever tiny pinprick of an audience Don Lemon has, there's probably not very many white guys. And they say, yeah, good for you, Don Lemon. And there's probably some white guys who are like, yeah, white guys suck. And certainly there's a lot of white women who are like, yeah, white men suck, because you can criticize white men almost universally based on our race and based on our gender. And that's acceptable in the identity politics worldview because white men are the cause of all problems, according to that worldview, and therefore all criticisms are fair to rain down upon us. Now, it's also fair, and I think this is why Gen Z, the younger men, are looking around. This is what my whole book, to a large extent, is about. A lot of people are looking around and saying, wait a minute, I didn't do anything. I don't have any power. I was born basically in 1980, 1979, April. Like, what great power as a white man have I been able to inflict upon the world? I joke about it. Like, I picked the worst time in history to become a super rich white guy because we're the arch villains of the global universe. But I was thinking about this more, and I don't think he'll ever respond, but I want to direct this to Don Lemon. Okay? So, and we'll clip it, we'll share it, but I do think this is important. Yesterday, Don Lemon wags his finger and he lectures white men about being too violent. We talked about it. So, as a general rule, I am opposed to violence. I hate death more than anybody on the planet, as we have well established. I hate violent crime more than anybody on the planet, as we have also well established on this program. But if you want to have a rational, honest discourse about violent crime, and you want to root it in some way in racial lecturing, here is what the data would reflect in broad numbers. On a per capita basis, black men commit by far infinitely higher rates of violent crime than any other group in America. Black men are the most violent group of people in America. Don Lemon is a black man. So black men off the charts levels of political violence. I don't know about political, but violence. Second, Hispanic men. Hispanic men are the second most violent as a racial group in America. Third is white men. Okay? Fourth is Asian men. So if you want to analyze rates of violent crime by race, black men would be number one. Hispanic men would be number two. There would be then a very big drop. Then it's white men. Then it is Asian men. Okay? Asian people, Asian men, have almost a non-existent rate of violent crime on a per capita basis. I should say this is all on a per capita basis, but even by raw numbers, black men are committing nearly half, basically, of all murders, even though black men only represent 6% of roughly of the United States population. Okay? So black men, most violent. Hispanic men, second most violent. White men, third most violent. Asian men, fourth most violent. Why did Don Lemon address his lecture about violence and race to white men and not even mention black men and not even mention Hispanic men? Because of the identity politics of race, right? White men are easy to blame, even though, again, we're third on this list. But let's talk about 1 and 4. Black men are the most violent in the United States. Asian men are the least violent in the United States. If we could have Asian male rates of violence nationwide in this country, 90% of all violent crime would vanish. Think about that for a minute. 90% plus of all violent crime in the United States would vanish if we had Asian men rates of violence across all racial groups. If we really want to have an honest conversation about violent crime in America, shouldn't we ask what Asian men and the culture that surrounds them is doing that is so beneficial that there is virtually no violent crime in the Asian community compared to huge violent crime in the black community, and more in the Hispanic community, and more in the white community. What are Asian men doing so well if the goal is to limit violent crime such that for racial groups, Asian men have infinitely lower rates of violence? That's a real conversation we should have, because if you want to have actual diversity of thought, the culture that is surrounding these Asian groups is one that should be in many ways emulated by the rest of the country, which would benefit white, black, Asian, Hispanic, all of us. Why? Now you can hop in and tell me why. The two things that stand out to me that I think would be most true, well, first of all, people would say, well, it's just poverty, right? This is the way that they try to explain away rates of high violent crime. The problem is, if you adjust for poverty, there's lots of really poor Asian people. Lots of recent immigrant Asian populations that do not have hardly any money at all in the United States, and they don't have high rates of violent crime. So I'm tossing that on the scrap heap. I think it's two things. One is dads at home. Not supposed to talk about this. The data overwhelmingly reflects that young men suffer when dad isn't home. In fact, if you adjust and just change one variable, the number one way to lower, in my opinion, that the data supports, to lower violent crime in the United States is to have dads at home. I bet if you overlay Asian dads and black dads, Asian dads are far more likely to be at home raising their sons than black dads are. People are like, oh, you can't do it. No, data doesn't lie, okay? A dad at home overwhelmingly diminishes the chance that son is going to be a violent predator, okay? So number one, dads at home. Number two, culture of education. A belief above all else in success in schools. I think this is undoubtedly true. Asian families embrace education more than Hispanic, white, and black families do. I would submit to you that the culture of Asian success in the United States and the culture of drastically less violent crime is rooted in two things that we as a country should be obsessively focused on. More dads at home, more focus on education in the family. In fact, if you talk to any teacher, you know what the number one thing that a lot of them will say characterizes successful kids in their schools? Parental involvement. Parents who show up for events at the school, parents who are engaged, know the teachers, email, their kids do scores of magnitude better than parents who are disengaged. What if, as a society, instead of Don Lemon making his stupid video, lecturing people, oh, white men, why are you so violent? The data doesn't even support that. But imagine if Don Lemon actually had the willingness to dive into the data like I just did and said, you know what this data reflects? Asian men are committing crimes at really minuscule levels in the United States. What can we do to help to drive down rates of violence all across every culture in the United States? Maybe we should look at what Asian families are doing, what the Asian culture is doing, such that violent crime is almost non-existent. I say almost non-existent. Yes, there are Asian violence. Yes, there are actions that lead to incredibly deleterious impacts in the Asian community too. I'm not saying it's flawless. I'm just saying if we had nationwide rates of violent crime similar to what Asian men do now, roughly 90% of all violent crime in America would vanish. Isn't that a really good goal? To have everybody benefit from the best practices of a culture, of a ethnic group? Isn't that what diversity should actually lead to? Better results for everyone? I'd love to hear someone address why I'm wrong on this. The data is clear. Black men the most violent, Hispanic men the second most violent, white men the third most violent, Asian men the fourth most violent. There's no real argument based on poverty, because you could adjust, I think, Asian poverty rates with black poverty rates, and the rate of violent crime would still be virtually non-existent in the Asian community. There's no systemic racism unless you think that the United States is a country that's been built to favor Asian people. It's not white supremacy, it's yellow supremacy. Yeah, I don't think that's right. I think my argument, dads at home, education, commitment, more so from that culture with dads at home and education commitment than white, black, or Hispanic families are doing. Shouldn't we all endeavor to follow the lead here of the Asian community when it comes to violent crime? And shouldn't we be capable of having an actually nuanced conversation that takes into account data instead of simply wagging our fingers at members of the community at large and trying to blame people? I want constructive results. Asian rates of violent crime should be aspired to and emulated by other communities in the United States. If we did that, I think the overall cultural impact would be beneficial for white, black, Asian, and Hispanic people, since violent rates of crime declining would benefit everybody. So anyway, that's my response. I was thinking about it quite a lot, and I do think it's interesting. All right, let's have some fun. I asked the question of Congressman Tim Burchett a little bit earlier, and I put up a poll question. This is lots of fun. Who made the worst decision? Nico when he went to UCLA, or Kamala when she picked Tim Walz as her vice president? This was Tim Burchett on Clay and Buck a little bit earlier. Listen.
Nico to UCLA, that choice, or Kamala Harris picking Tim Walz as her vice president? Who made the worst decision?
I'm going to say Kamala. She was a train wreck anyway, and she just picked a bigger train wreck. I like JD. He's strong, and he's kind of a buddy of mine, I guess, but they call him Tampon Tim or something. I don't even like saying it, but he is just he's a knucklehead, man. He just can't get out of his own way. I don't know who he was running against to get elected governor out there, but dadgum. Must have been a convicted felon getting ready to go to the electric chair or something. I'm not sure who the Republicans put up against him. But, yeah, Nico, I mean, he just took some bad advice, but he'll get a little bit of a paycheck, and if he can just get all his groupies and family away from him, he might be okay. He might be able to salvage something in the Canadian Football League. But, yeah, that's where I'm at.
This is a niche. I realize this is a niche poll question. Only 4,000 of you-ish have voted. But it's a tough one if you're in that niche. 55% of you said Kamala picking Walz was the worst decision. You agreed with Congressman Tim Burchett of the state of Tennessee. 45% of you said Nico to UCLA. I'd go with the 45%. Nico now has no defensive coordinator, no offensive coordinator, no head coach, and Penn State is coming to the Rose Bowl as a 3+ touchdown favorite. And I think there's a legitimate case that UCLA is going to go 0-12 with Nico. Meanwhile, Joey Aguilar is leading the SEC in passing yards, and Tennessee is sitting there at 4-1. In a couple of weeks, they're going to beat Arkansas, and they're going to go 5-1. I think probably worst case scenario, Tennessee's going to go 9-3. Pretty good year. A lot better than 0-12. All right, do we have a clip of J.D. Vance? I think this is J.D. Vance talking about the memes of Hakeem Jeffries, of him being a sombrero-wearing advocate for illegal immigrants. Very funny memes that are out there. J.D. Vance was asked about that. This is what he said.
You can negotiate in good faith while also poking a little bit of fun at some of the absurdities of the Democrats' positions, and even, poking some fun at the absurdity of the Democrats themselves. I mean, I'll tell Hakeem Jeffries right now, I make this solemn promise to you that if you help us reopen the government, the sombrero memes will stop. And I've talked to the President of the United States about that.
Okay, I've got a solution for this because all I do is solve problems for everyone. Every time the government shuts down, every single congressman and woman and every single senator should lose half of their government pay. If you can't fund a budget such that you shut down the United States government, every single time you are doing so, you'll lose half of your pay. Pass the bill. I bet we would never have another government shutdown. Take away half their paycheck, and I'm telling you, there would be an incentive to actually get things solved as opposed to just create a sideshow like is happening right now. Final bit of news, and I'm about to tape the fade with Kelly Stewart, so we'll have some gambling picks for you. Joe Flacco has been benched by the Cleveland Browns. Spoiler alert, the quarterback of the Cleveland Browns does not matter. This team is going to keep losing no matter what. Unfortunately, they're a little bit like my Tennessee Titans. But Joe Flacco has been benched. Dylan Gabriel has been elevated as the new starting quarterback of the Cleveland Browns. Is Shador still in third? Is he still in third tier here, third place on the backup situation? But a little bit of NFL news there for all of you that Joe Flacco has been benched. Also, I'm correct in this, right? Brian Snitker, this happened, I believe, while I was on air. The Atlanta Braves World Series champion manager has decided, am I correct? Make sure that I'm right about this. Has decided that he is going to step down as the Atlanta Braves manager. I loved watching Snitker's teams play. 2021 Atlanta Braves World Series for my boys who are big Atlanta Braves fans was a fantastic year to follow, and I wish Brian Snitker the best in the years ahead for him. Okay. I appreciate all of you. By the way, one bit of corrective things, I guess. I didn't know that guy. The MSNBC guy was Lawrence O'Donnell. I think I said it was Lawrence Tribe. It's basically the same guy. Yes, Snitker has officially stepped down, and Sanders is still listed as in the third position, with Flacco now as the backup of Dylan Gabriel for the Cleveland Browns. All right, going to do the gambling show with Kelly Stewart now. We'll do the show tomorrow. Want to encourage you to continue to watch, click like, and subscribe on the Paul Feinbaum interview online, long form. It's an hour. Download it, whatever you can listen to it. If you're on the road and you need something to consume, I think you will enjoy it. I will be back with you guys tomorrow on this same Bat channel. I'll also be on Sean Hannity tonight, this evening. So you can see me on Fox News as well. And as always, until then, DBAP unless you need to SBAP. I'm Clay Travis, and this has been OutKick, the show.